All right, here we are. What's cracking? What's popping? What's shaking? Happy Friday! It is another episode of. Hold on, let me make sure my light. Yeah, okay. It's another episode of the Comic Cinematic Universe with Chillin' Grace. Grace, what up?
Hello. I am like a corpse today, not just because of my blue fingers, but because this is the second night in a row, 2 hours of sleep. It's been a nerdy week. Happy belated May the 4th to all of you guys.
Oh
Uh,
yes, I'm with that. Yeah, May the Fourth be with everybody. You know what I'm saying, but yeah,
yes. I think I mentioned last time we saw you guys last Friday that I would be going to the Disney After Dark Star Wars thing.
how was it? Talk to us.
It was actually such a fun time. Super fun time. Sadly, and I don't understand how they do this, but Rise of the Resistance was closed the entire night of the event. It's from like 9 to 1. Guys, this is a Star Wars night. The biggest of fans. And it was closed. So we were like really salty about that. My partner was super upset.
Yeah, I would be too. It's like first I paid to get into the park for one, and then two, I came to celebrate Star Wars, and you have an attraction shut down. Like, come on, Disney. But
But
I
it
won't say come on, Disney. I love Disney. Disney, I love you. Just letting you know, putting it out there.
color. No, it was really cool. So highly recommend to all of you. Have you gone to the Avengers campus? I don't know if we've talked about this before. Have you gone yet?
I, being that I've lived out here for quite some time, almost 8 years, I've yet to go to any Disney attraction here in LA. I've only been to Disney World in Florida. I haven't been to Disneyland, but because the Avengers campus opened last year, the year before, I need to like make that trip. Like I need to make it apparent. And I think with the
Yes.
summer right here, I think I'm probably gonna go during the summer.
Keep us posted. We have not gone to the Avengers campus. Like we've been to Disneyland for a couple times, but
Hmm.
I California Adventure since any of like the Marvel stuff. So I feel like it'd be cool if we did an episode just talking about how cool it is.
Yeah. The only thing Marvel related that I've done kind of like that was the Marvel Museum in Vegas. Like they have like a MCU exhibit, which is pretty dope, where you can try to pick up Thor's hammer or whatnot. So yeah, yeah. So Avengers
Guys,
Campus is next on the to do list.
guys, buy our merch so you can support like nerdy trips for us. So like just show you guys cool things, museums, all that kind of stuff. So check out the shop link. You know where it's at.
Yeah, I like that. So I don't even have to change the background just because, being that we don't have too many other pictures to talk about, we have plenty to talk about. I just put Moon Knight as our main background from the jump, from the very beginning. That's what we're gonna be chatting about today. We're gonna be talking about the finale of Moon Knight. So if you have yet to see it, it's Friday. It came out Wednesday. I don't want to spoil it, but you should have been seeing it. So, listen, we're holding off from spoiling Doctor Strange. Grace, she saw it. She said she's not going to tell me until I see it, and I'm seeing it at 7 o'clock tonight. So, Moon Knight. We're here with spoilers for Moon Knight. All types of talk for Moon Knight episode 6. So, first things first, okay? I want to talk about a theory that you and I had. And the theory of, I posted it on our Instagram as far as the other personality that Mark possibly has. Now, for you all that saw the Instagram, because I didn't have that picture initially of Mark with the bruised face, but there was a personality that showed up at the very end of episode 6, and I believe that's two separate personalities. Because we had this one from episode 4, and then he, like you said, had a slight, maybe like New York accent. That was episode 5. Slight New York accent. May have been different from Mark. Could have been a boxer. But we were introduced to another personality that was only speaking Spanish. So I'm going to say total, there's at least four people in there so far. And Khonshu, he kind of made it a point to say he's like he doesn't know how damaged it is. He is, and neither do we. We don't know how damaged she is. You know, we may have seen. Oh, I went back episode 4. That's where they actually arrive in the psych ward, and I did see that extra sarcophagus. So somebody was in there. We just don't know who it is, but that's where I wanted to start. So
The very
yeah, from beginning to end, from episode 5 to episode 6. Now I'm counting at least 4 people in there. What do you think?
man. Okay, well, we're hitting that post credit scene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Finale post credit scene, really well done. So okay, this is what I will say. This is Jake Lockley, right? This is the one that we've been waiting for, the personality that I believe is responsible for maybe the dates, although I have some little plot hole twists on that as well, but let's
Mm-hmm.
just keep it now. Responsible for the dates, for those sudden blackouts where neither Mark nor Steven were involved. We
Mm-hmm.
saw it a couple times. I think that it was like episode 3, and then of course in this episode we see it as well in the big fight scene. And it kind of just confirmed. And we made a post also like earlier this week, just like, you know, with one personality still left, are we going to see a new suit? That's going to have to wait for season 2.
Mm-hmm.
But back to the whole like New Yorker accent, the little snippet that a lot of us were thinking may have been the first like physical look at Jake. I think that it was dissolved, sadly, because I was so certain that because the voice was so distinctively different than Mark's, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, it has to be like Jake, and we know he's a boxer. We had that whole like boxer band-aid on the nose,
Mm-hmm.
but the reason I'm now kind of reverting and thinking that may have just been Mark all along in that snippet is because in the at the end of this finale, once you know Khonshu releases Mark and Steven, right? They're back at the psychiatrist's office, and it's Steven and Mark having this conversation with Harrow. And when Mark speaks, it's that same like grittier, almost New Yorky accent. I don't know why it's so distinctively different, but I mean, being that it ended in this way, and this is supposed to be like a very big moment for their characters, right? They're kind of facing that part of their consciousness that makes them doubt themselves, makes them doubt reality. And once they decide to part and be like, you know what, like, I know, we know what we are, we're secure with who we are, we're accepting all pieces of ourselves, the good and the bad,
Mm-hmm.
then they go back into what we're going to just call the world, right? So because it's such a monumental moment, I don't want to discredit it by saying, oh, that was also maybe a different personality in that piece. Could it
Mm-hmm.
be? Sure. But I'm just gonna say it was Mark. But still, it bothers me because not the personality, but the voice is distinctively different.
Can
Like,
I
did you?
let me throw this at you, okay? Because in rewatching episode 5, because that's what I did just to kind of get ready for episode 6. So in rewatching episode 5, right, we get the moment to where he's at the desk with Hera with the bruised face, right? Now with that, I heard the slight difference in what you were talking about in terms of maybe voice and tone, more so dialect, I would say. Um, but then it cuts back to Mark and Steven right in front of the hippopotamus god, and he said, "Wow, these are crazy drugs." Now,
Mhm.
from that quick cut right then and there, I'm going to assume that if Mark and Steven are in front of the hippo, another personality's with Harrow. So even though it's like kind of quick and then it cuts to Mark just being, wow, these drugs are crazy, I feel like he's saying it's crazy just from seeing Towerette and not
Mhm.
from coming from the office straight back to Towerette. So I think, if anything, that is another. I think for me, it makes sense to where it is possibly another personality.
Yeah. See, and I don't want to give up on it fully because the thing is, it's so distinctive. And the thing is that I think Oscar Isaac has done such a great job with both Mark and Steven. Why would they let this slip in very specific, you know what I mean? So for that reason, I'm like, maybe it could be like on your route, but I think like and I don't know, did you notice like the like New Yorker accent come back in that final scene that I was talking about. Did you notice that as well? Or
In this finale?
yeah, like in the final end scene with Harrow in the office before they go back into like the apartment.
I'm gonna have to rewatch it one more time.
And we're gonna have to get back to it because it's the same voice he used in that scene we just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I'm like, I guess it was just Mark. But I want you to look back at it and then we can kind of reconvene on it. But we got Jake Lockley.
Mm-hmm.
He was big away. I thought it was real cool. I thought it was cool how he was just like, I introduced you to my friend Jake Lockley, and then it was just like double tap, boom boom,
Right,
and then
right.
end.
Now, we're gonna come back to this scene, and I know I kind of started at the end. I do want to get back to that part specifically, but let's rewind and bring it back to the beginning, okay? Because for the last few weeks, Grace has been talking about the possibility of resurrection, and what did we get?
Mm.
we got we got the resurrection. It was another point called from Grace. Good job, Grace. You got it. You called it.
I did. But
Mm-hmm.
I just want to give credit to the team because honestly, there were so many predictions or just possible outcomes that I think we both spitballed throughout this whole breakdown of the
Mm-hmm.
season. I think this is the one I've been most proud of us because we've nailed it on the head in like so many.
Yeah.
Yes, no, in my notes I literally wrote down, Grace, you were right. And so for those of you guys who did not watch our, I think it was episode 4 or 5. I think we mentioned in both, but 4 and 5 breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
We posted this as well. How we suspected there being a Easter egg or kind of a hint to how Mark and Steven would be resurrected,
Mm-hmm.
being that Cyrus or his avatar was the one that put Khonshu's Ushapti into that little like shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Osiris being the god of the underworld and resurrection, we were like, okay, maybe this is a hint as to how he gets out of the afterlife. And lo and behold, that's exactly what happens. I love how Tauret is Tauret.
Mm-hmm. That's just I'm with that. Yep.
I love how she's like, oh, Osiris, you big softy, you
Right,
know?
right. I did love that, because by this point, this is when uh, Harrow and his followers they make it into Giza, and then of course Osiris he sees kind of the quote unquote treachery afoot. I don't use that terminology often, so I just wanted to take advantage of using it. But he saw the treachery basically happen, and after realizing that they are actually there to release what's the name of the god again that they're looking to Amit, right? Release Amit and pretty much see that Conchu and Mark were kind of telling the truth. It was just like I was hoping to see what form we were gonna get Osiris, but we didn't even get that. It was just more so he opened the gates for them to come back to life.
Yeah, it was like his final efforts, now realizing, oh, like crap, these guys were totally right. They tried to warn us, we were wrong, and they definitely paid for it. And because of this episode, we start off and like Mark is in the field of reeds, Steven is lost to the Duat. And it's so heartwarming because, like Tower is telling Mark, like, oh, you're free, you have everything you've ever wanted. And for a moment, he was kind of like, "Oh, like I guess I could live here," right? He tells Steven, but he's like, I can't leave him behind. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's not going to leave him." And it's him going back for Steven that warmed Osiris's heart. I think it just kind of gave him that final nudge of like, we got to bring these guys back. This is the only hope we have.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold
And
on.
before we,
Hold on.
oh,
My dog is napping and she's dreaming. I gotta check on her. One sec.
this is important, guys. If you guys are dog parents, you totally understand. While we are waiting for Chill, actually no, I think I'll wait for him to come back to mention this. But what do I say to entertain y'all? Thank you, Chill. I was like, how do I hold it down?
What's going on? What are you doing?
Oh, nothing. I wanted to wait to kind of bring this point up about this specific scene. So there was a conversation between Steven and Mark, right, as he's telling him like I don't want to leave you behind. And we talked about it a little bit earlier in different episodes of the series where he says like you were the only superpower I ever had.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that they snuck that in there and that he mentioned that line because it's a direct kind of call to a comic that we kind of referred to in previous episodes that sets up like his dissociative personality disorder to be a superpower. We talked about this. Like, you know, I don't have the ability to bring out someone else within me that has a skill set I don't have. If like I say I need something to be done that I just don't have that skill set for. So for many reasons, it is a superpower. We've definitely seen the benefits in that earlier in these episodes. And I just love that they did give that like kind of definitive little statement, being that this does tackle mental health and we typically don't see all of the positive sides of things like dissociative personality disorder, ADHD, bipolar, you know, all the other ones, borderline personality disorder. So it's really cool to have this definitive thing to give this like silver lining for something that most people only really see
Mm-hmm.
the bad sides too. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I liked it to the point to where, uh, like there's the quote where it's like love thyself, but right here we're getting like two separate personalities, and even though they're the same person physically, psychologically, they you can see, especially from uh, the end of episode 4 when they first arrived in the psych ward, like they gave each other like a brotherly hug, like oh I'm happy to see you, da 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 da. But like say here after Mark's speech, you can feel it, like they actually like bonded at first. Like throughout the whole entire season, of course there wasn't, it was just two separate people fighting over one body, and then it just came to the point to where they came together, they bonded, they of course anything like that where both of them are going through, I don't want to say traumatic experiences, but like similar like crazy situations together, of course they're gonna grow and become almost one within that one body. But I like now that it's to the point to where uh, I know I'm gonna skip to the end again, but I know it's to the point to where now it's like they're sharing the body. It's not like a fight over the body of Mark Spector. It's more so like they're actually having conversations to the point to where they don't even need a reflection. There was a moment to where Mark got up out of bed and he was like, yo, did you, or something. He said something to Steven, and then right then and there, Steven responded. So it's like, I feel like they grew to the point to where now uh, they're working, let's say, harmoniously with the body.
Yeah, and we've talked about this. Like we were like, if only they could just like find their harmony, like they would really, you know, grasp this what truly is a superpower, you know. And I feel like it was so well symbolized with, you know, this kind of moment solidifies with like one heart forming from them finally accepting all aspects of themselves, right? Not just the easy parts, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
the did take a while for them to find this harmony, and you know they get this one full heart and then they're able to kind of go back into our world, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, we're here back to, let's say, the episode, because I don't want to say the beginning, because from here, after Osiris sees that Hera is bringing back, damn, I keep forgetting her name. What's her name again? Amit, right? So, uh, he opens the gate. They both come back, and when they do come back, at this point, uh, what's the wife's name? Layla. She has opened up or broke the, I don't want to say talisman of Khonshu. What did they call it? The little.
I said it.
You
Oh,
did say it earlier. Yeah, Ushapti. Is that what you said?
I think so, but I'm gonna double check. I think I said it too confidently earlier,
I
but
I
continue.
heard it and it actually sounded right. So I think it is a new Shopti. So uh
I did.
she broke that, but then oh, before we even get to that, let's talk about while they're still in the underworld, she's over here trying to take Harrow out solo dolo, like by herself, right? And Harrow, he's kind of powered up his staff here, and he gets to the point to where he has to take out, let's say, a small troop. I don't want to call it an army, but Layla's there. He doesn't know that she's there, but she's kind of walking around, and all of these dead soldiers are kind of coming back to life briefly to talk to her, and it's that Toweret god. And I was thinking, if anything, while Toweret was talking to her, I thought that she was gonna let Layla know. This is like, hey, I actually got Mark over here. You know what I'm saying? And he's fighting to get back to you. Don't worry, and everything's gonna be all good. But it came to the point to where even in that moment, uh, Tara offered her to be her avatar, you know, and that was one moment that I was looking forward to see how we were gonna kind of shift from her being on a boat to her being one of these gods, kind of like every other god that we've seen here, right? Um, but say where I don't want to say it fell short, but where I feel like it's like a little thing that I may have wanted to see is being that once Layla became this avatar and she became all golded out and badass. I was thinking that Taweret was gonna come in and join Khonshu in this fight against Amit.
Like physically, not just like as like via avatar.
Yeah,
Is that what you're?
physically like Khonshu, you know, like cause what's up?
No, I was just saying maybe it's because like maybe she just couldn't leave where she was in the underworld because her job is important.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, kind of like how the other gods, like they're kind of in like this pocket dimension chilling, and their avatars are essentially kind of like, being the observers on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it would have been cool though, because visually I feel like Tower it has like a very like just interesting presence, right? Like I think the detail like visually of her is really well done. So yeah, I think it would have been cool. But also I do like the fight scenes we got with Khonshu and Amit. And I think having her in it, I feel like would make it sillier or goofier just because of her demeanor. You know what I mean?
I get it, but just sorry, I'm kind of veering off here because one thing you mentioned as far as how she looks, one thing that I liked whoever put this together visually, I actually like the way Tauret looks and the way Amit looks. Whoever the visual producer, graphics person is over at Marvel, they killed it, and not only just like making these creatures, whether if it's like a hippopotamus or is Amit like a gator? Would you say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's like, yeah, yeah.
Uh, dressed up in Egyptian wear, but also not only just what they were wearing, but like both both of these, of course, they're female goddesses, and they both have like whoever did their braided hair, like their braided hair looked pretty dope. And I was like, damn, they almost kind of got it to a T. I was like, okay, I see whoever did that, whoever put that together, they put a vast amount of detail into these two goddesses.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's something we appreciated just from seeing Taweret. And then, this is where we got our first introduction of Amit.
Yeah.
I did look up the name. I mean, who knows if this is accurate, but series visual effects, I have listed Luis Cicero, Portales, Matt Aki. I think it says the VFX supervisor was Sean Andrew Faden.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like a lot of people, which makes sense, had their hands on creating these characters, and it just looked amazing.
Yeah.
It's very, I think, hard to be emotionally invested when you have these huge special effects fight scenes. And so when it's executed really well, like it's just something you always have to applaud.
Well, one thing about Marvel that I'm just going to say, not Marvel, but the MCU just particularly, when it comes down to these shows and movies, right? Um, After our talk, maybe last episode or two episodes when we're talking about like Kevin Feige is going to the MCU little retreat to kind of plan out the next 10 years. I'm now picturing maybe like 10 years ago. Uh, Feige gathers his VFX team and they start creating everything that, let's say, comes out today, something like Moon Knight, just so everything makes sense visually. Because we've seen movies to where you can be like, yeah, that's CG, yeah, that's fake, you know. But to have these artists put the time and energy to making these characters look realistic. I'm not even talking about, of course, fight scenes are they look CG, but I'm talking about the actual look of these characters to where they look like they're actually there, you know. And um, it to me it's spectacular, you know. They do it, and I think if anything, let's say if they had their little retreat 2 weeks ago, they've already started possibly planning out the visual effects for the movies that are coming out in the next maybe 5 to 10 years. You know.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is that they're doing, they're like blowing it out of the park. Like these TV series, I think every single one we watch, we're like, oh my God, this is our favorite. This is like even better than this one. And this, I feel like, is the same thing. Like, I really like this, especially because it is so different, like storytelling wise,
Mm-hmm.
as character we're being introduced to, and it's those little details that I think keep our the fans like excited. You know, like we've been in this for many years, and we have very high expectations of Marvel, and they continue to deliver. So
Uh, I don't know if this is true or not, but let's just say like I want to take it back just to Thanos just for a second. The first instance of where we saw Thanos, if that was maybe first Avengers, or when did we see him at the end of the first Avengers? See his face,
I,
you remember?
or are you talking about Avengers like the
The
movie?
movie.
I want to say that is the first time we see him
I
because I believe at the end, unless I'm mixing up end credit
Yeah,
scenes.
no, yeah, it was a post credit scene, and I think it was a post credit scene to Avengers. Now, looking at Thanos then versus the Thanos that we got in Infinity War and Endgame, those were two different Thanoses, and I honestly feel as if like the first Thanos we got was Josh Brolin in makeup, and they kind of put it out there to feel out, and then from the feedback, they're just like, we're gonna go the CG route, and in between the first Avengers and Infinity War, that's a good maybe like 6 or 7 years to make Thanos look realistic through CG, you know? So it's like those type of effects, I feel like now is just part of Marvel's platform. It's like, okay, if we have to make an ancient Egyptian god named Khonshu, which is just like a mummified skeleton of a bird, we're gonna use the same template that we did for Thanos to make it make sense, you know? And everything that we saw here in Moon Knight. Moon Knight, I feel like, is maybe the first show that we got here to where it's not relied on these characters, but we got more of these CG characters because Loki was more so actors and actresses. Like we
Mhm.
didn't really get a lot of CG characters there. Um, what else? Same thing with of course Captain well, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we didn't get anything. That was more so realistic, like, and pretty much every show outside of What If is just kind of just like regular actors and actresses, you know. So I think this is the first show where we're getting more CG based characters.
Yes, and being that they have, I mean, come on, like they have such a huge budget, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's, I think one of our fears was that with Marvel making TV shows, like, is it going to be like, the CW, like DC TV shows where, yeah, the story's great, people love them, I've seen them, they're great to enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
but I can never melt in the world when like it just doesn't look cinematically, like I'm not as invested, you know.
Right.
It's nice to see that. I mean, these aren't that case at all. Like they're very much just 7 hour like
Right,
movie.
they're let's say they're on a movie budget. They're not on a TV budget. They're on a movie budget. Like I like how you said that just now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was gonna say a little bit since we're kind of on the conversation of just like effects and visuals and things for these gods. So Khonshu, there was a comment that Amit made of his appearance. She was like, she said something along the lines of like the years have not like done you favorably or
Right,
something
haven't
like
been kind or something like that.
having to you, something to that effect. And I wonder if this is like a little like nod to how he actually looks in Egyptian mythology, which is he's like a bird. He's like a bird man,
Mm-hmm.
where more like of a skeleton. And so I wonder if it's to suggest that maybe at some point he was more like bird hybrid, the same way that we see Taweret and Ame looking like just like the creatures that they represent. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I wonder
Yeah.
if that was kind of like the dig, you know?
Yeah.
That is it.
Okay. Um, take us to the next. What else did you see?
Let's see. Okay, so we got Khonshu's escape. We've talked about Mark and Steven leaving the afterlife. And so the moment that he is back in the body, right, we're back at the pyramid,
Mm-hmm.
right, where they found Alexander the Great. And I really like the scene where Khonshu like just senses Mark's presence again and immediately just goes to his body. Yes, it's for selfish reasons, and I get that does get added towards the end with, you know,
Mm-hmm.
his betrayal to Mark, really, and we'll kind of get to that. But it was kind of like it was kind of a warm meeting of them like reuniting because we haven't seen them together again since like episode 3, I think, right?
Yeah, when Steven was doing the star thing.
The star thing. No, but it was kind of a cool like little reunion between the two of them, and like you know like Khonshu was like, "See, you missed me. Don't say you didn't miss me." And then this is where you know because Khonshu is like the god of the sky, they just kind of fly back to where the main fight is happening, and then by this point, right, he starts fighting Harrow, and Amit starts fighting Khonshu,
Mm-hmm.
and it's such a cool parallel because you get a lot of these scenes where in the forefront you see Mark, Steven, and Harrow fighting, and in the background you have Khonshu and Amit, and it just looks very visually appealing. And in the middle of the fight, this is where we have Layla come in her, I think she's referred to this as the Scarlet Scarab. And we'll kind of talk about like the comic book implications there. But when she joins the fight, I just love like their individual reactions, right? Because we get Mark, who's just like, happy to see her again because, you know, they both thought they were kind of lost to each other forever.
Mm-hmm.
And then Steven just kind of comes in like, oh my God, what are you wearing? Like, it was just so cute. It was so
I
good.
think I did honestly the whole thing with the little girl saying it's like, "Are you an Egyptian superhero?" I was
Yeah.
like, "Yep, she sure is." Yep. So I thought I like that. And when seeing Layla at first, of course I wasn't expecting to see wings, but I don't know when seeing those wings, I was like, okay, we got a female Egyptian falcon over here, you know.
Yes, I literally, that's what I wrote down. That is what I wrote down. And it's so funny. Like, so yes, when she first like shows the wings, it just looks fierce. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like Luna has already proven herself to be a badass. You know, we've seen her in hand-to-hand combat thus far. So just giving her a pair of wings like made her a force to be reckoned with, like even further.
Mm-hmm.
There was something I'm like, what does this remind me of? What does this remind me of? And it's the scene where she uses her wings like a shield,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, Falcon. That was cool.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you, with her having her newfound powers, do you think if anything, let's say, if not season two, just later on in the timeline, do you think she is a character to where, if anything, she can get like her own spinoff or her own movie? Like, would you like predict that she could do that?
I mean, I feel like she would be a really cool character to have that happen too because she has a past and connections to other like areas that have been referenced in the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember the place that Sharon's from. What is it? Uh,
Mm, I don't know why I was about to say Morag, but that's a totally different country. No, no, not a country, planet. Jeez, but I forgot the
yeah,
name of the place. I know what you're talking about.
I feel like she's such a mysterious person. You know, she's taken on different like personalities. She has different passports. She has like this whole underground thing. Like people know her. She's like, you know, kind of a target in Cairo, right? She was like, oh, like I upset people here. So she, I think, does have like I think the potential to carry her own show.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see it, especially with I know that her and her relationship with Taura is supposed to be like temporary,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I wonder if that's not going to be the case now, just
After
because.
those wings, hell no. She's used to be like, nah. Like I love. She's like she loves her newfound powers. I doubt she's gonna give that back.
Yeah, and you know, and it's not like she has an abusive like conchu in her mind either, right? Like I feel like I wouldn't mind, you know, having this positive person in my head. You know what I mean? But in addition, because now she has this connection, like a direct connection to her father that Tao Remet made like a comment about, you know. So I wonder if like she's gonna keep her around, you know?
Well, if anything, Tower Red is the only one to actually know where he is, which she, of course, mentioned that she, I guess, guided him to his field of reeds or whatnot. So, if Layla wanted to have that connection, it's open. You'd be like, oh hey, if anything, tell Dad I said hey, and I love him. You know.
Yeah, and it definitely like feels like that's the case because she's like, oh, like your dad's gonna be so proud, like, you know, to imply that like, oh, I'm gonna go tell him when I'm done with this, you know what I mean, something to that effect. So I feel like, you know, in addition to like these are just badass powers, like I'm gonna live in this for a
Mm-hmm.
bit, like, you know, who wouldn't like maintain that connection to these loved ones that are so far away now, you
Yeah.
know?
So
Yeah.
with that being said, random question I have: do you believe that uh, the people of Egypt saw two ginormous gods fighting each other, or do you think it was invisible to the human eye, just like Khonshu has been this whole entire season?
I mean, see, that always like was weird to me, and I think we talked about it. Like, I wonder, like, why is it that they can only be seen? I don't know. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say because are they unable to be seen because they choose that to be the case, or are they just not able to be seen by people who are not their avatars? You know what I mean? Like, I'm not too sure. I'm assuming they didn't see them, you know, because otherwise, why we would have that scene early on to kind of establish that they're not visual to people who aren't, I guess, involved directly, right?
But with that, say and that's where we're starting to get specific because you're saying now with people that aren't or that are involved directly. So in this episode, when Layla releases Conchu, she saw him. She wasn't his avatar at all. They had a conversation, and she was like, "Nah, I'm good. You tortured Mark. I'll pass." You know what I'm saying? So it's like it puts it to the point to where yes, it is a possibility that these two giant beings were seen,
Mm-hmm.
or they could have been invisible like Conchu has been this whole entire time. So I don't know. I just want to kind of gauge and see what you thought about that.
I mean, I wonder if that's just an inconsistency too, right? Because you're right. Like at that point, Layla had absolutely no like direct involvement. Like, yes, she's part of the story, but she's not an avatar at that point. Like, she's not a Greek god. Um. So yeah, I wonder if it's an inconsistency or if they're gonna tell us down the road like what the case was. Like maybe we'll get like a an Easter egg in future projects where it's like referring to big event in Egypt where these random rocks were just flying without, like, you know what I mean? Like, I wonder if we'll get something to give us an idea of what's going on. But for now, I think that's just gonna end up being TBD. Um, and just kind of speaking of inconsistencies, so we talked about Toweret's comment on Layla's father, and Layla's father had died what within like maybe the past within a year it seems like, right?
It really depends on how long they have been married. because
That's
her father passed before she even met Mark.
that's so true. Okay, okay. So let's just say, like, even let's just say 5 years. At, like, if we give a big span, so I feel like that would cover,
Mm-hmm.
like maybe the relationship. Um, However, had made a comment of like there having not been many people, like having been people passing through the Egyptian afterlife for a very, very, very long
Right.
time. And so for God to say that, like a deity who's been around for so long, a very long time means a very long time for them,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So definitely not the span of 5 years in or, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Just to
So
say, like, no one's passed through here in a very long time, and then you said, "Oh, I just spoke to your dad, who may have just passed, like, let's say 5 years ago." 5 years isn't really that long of a
yeah.
time, but to a god, that's just like 5 minutes, you know.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? So I feel like that's an inconsistency. And in addition, I think it's episode 5 where we see all these souls like passing into the afterlife before their
Mm-hmm.
time. At first I was like, okay, maybe they're the disciples because they obviously do follow Egyptian mythology. But if they're the disciples, their souls wouldn't be the ones who are coming into the afterlife. So I feel like that's an inconsistency on Marvel's part
Let's
right
not
there.
say that. Let's just say we have no idea who Tauret is. She could be up to no good, just like Conchu, and she could have just
God.
found a way to make Layla an avatar. Be like, oh yeah, I just talked to your dad. You want to talk to him? Here, all you gotta do is just want to join with me. Yeah,
This step.
great, gotcha. You know what I'm saying? So let's not say it's an inconsistency. Let's just say that we don't know Tauret's true intentions, just because she made her whole deal is being on a boat watching these souls kind of pass by. She's not really out here on Earth. You know what I'm saying? She just may want some eyes and ears just to see what's going on Earth. So I don't know.
Maybe and it was Layla who said like in the very beginning like this is temporary, and then a little bit like in that same kind of scene she's just like your father. So I can see that happening. I mean, you went a very dark route. You're like, no, this is all manipulation and blackmail, but you know what, I dig
These
it.
guys out here, they're really mischievous. So let's just we.
Hey, it's not just yet, but maybe it's pretty close enough.
Mm-hmm.
The same outline. Let's see. Oh, okay. So we started talking about the fight scenes right between all of these different characters. A lot of beautifully orchestrated scenes. I really, really like though how it was Steven who's like, "Let me show you our new moves," and he's like kicking ass,
Mm-hmm.
because we've seen him be this like a badass wearing
We've
his suit.
seen
He's
them
usually
do the put 'em up. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
and so it was cool. It was so cool to see him like have this moment. And I think it also kind of was linked to what we saw on the boat in episode 5, where he's like, "You got this, Mark," and then he's like, "If you got this, so do I." And that's where he like sacrifices himself. So I feel like he found something in him to like kind of conjure that up for this episode. I thought that was really cool. I like that our boy got his moment.
Well, like, let's say I remember when we first started talking about the show, we were talking about how Mark is the hand to hand combat guy, and Steven is more so not. So let's just say with time, Steven realizes that the suit is there to protect him, to protect the body, and he was there when Mark was getting stabbed with all of these like spears over at that ranch or whatever. So being that Mark came out of that body still intact, that could have given Steven the confidence just to be like, oh, as long as I got the suit, I'll be all right. I got my two sticks. Boom. Here's a knee to your chest. Bang. Like Steven was out there like out. I was like, okay, I'm impressed, Steven. I wasn't expecting all that. I thought Mark was gonna run the whole fight show, but Steven got his licks in too.
Yeah, and I do like how there's this scene where he gets thrown out the window, and then it's Mark that comes back, almost like you hurt my little brother, and then he's the one who comes in and like finishes off that guy.
Mm-hmm.
It was just orchestrated so well, and I think it matches, because we've seen them kind of handle fights before and it ends up so sloppy, like, like the one you referred to where they're getting stabbed, because they're just not in harmony, they almost die. And so it's to see them finally kind of get it together. It's not just the suit, right? They had the suit before. Like, it's really this relationship is the superpower, you
Right.
know?
Um. So in this fight scene, we get to see Harrow take on Moon Knight and Layla. Layla doesn't have a cool name yet, but I'm sure that's to come. So,
Oh, hold on, before you get in, because I meant to bring this up when we kind of talked about her and Taura, but I have a couple of comic book little like snippets about her and her name and all of
wait,
that. Do you want it now?
hold on. I can hear you, but you froze again.
No, hello.
No, we hear you, but your visual is
Dang.
frozen. Let me see. Hold on. Oh, we're good. We're good.
Okay, cool, cool, cool. So do you want those comic book snippets now or later?
Go
Whatever's
for it. Go for
okay.
it.
I had it here and then I completely forgot. So Layla, and there's a lot of little like snippets throughout these series to suggest who she becomes, which is the Scarlet Scarab. I believe in the scene where she comes up in episode 4, during when they're in like the asylum
Mhm.
initially,
Mhm.
she has like a scarlet scarab, like a red scarab symbol on one of the band-aids in her left arm on the scene. That's very visual. So I think that the rumor started there, like, oh, she's gonna suit up at the end of the series. I actually didn't catch this until now that I was kind of backtracking.
But is that how? Just to kind of add on to that, is that how Harrow described her dad's little scarf? Was it
Yeah,
like a
because
scarlet scarf
scarlet.
with a scarab on it?
Yes. So there's been a lot of little tidbits to suggest that this is the mantle she'll take. This is probably the biggest one though. So the character in the comics, there's a villain who dons the mantle of the Scarlet Scarab. His name is Abdul Faoli. Her name that appears in the passport that she gets at the start of episode, I think 3,
Mm-hmm.
is Layla Abdallah El Fauli. So you see kind of like the resemblances between the names. And so there was a lot of Easter eggs to kind of lead up to this point. So that was pretty cool.
Well, I think that was the name that you just mentioned. That is when she's yelling at Mark in the pyramid. I think she said that name to him. Like, did you kill who? I can't even pronounce it. Yeah, that name.
Oh, okay. And that's what I didn't catch. I know the scene you're talking about. Like yeah, like when she's confronting him about killing her father.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yeah.
Well, I gotta check that again. Yeah, I don't remember like the first name, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
So back to the fight scene. Harrow's actually kind of holding his own. He has to hold his own. He doesn't have anybody else to kind of tag team. But it's him and his staff, and it gets to the point to where uh, he gets Layla separate from Mark, and it's just him and Mark going at it. And in this moment, uh, Mark, as you think he's almost getting overpowered, then it's like a familiar moment where he's blacking out, and we've seen it multiple times throughout the show, and from there he's no longer getting overpowered. Everybody else around in the area, any other Harrow followers, dead or just beat up and knocked out, So this is where Steven or Mark asked Steven, he was like, "Yo, that wasn't you," and he does. This is where we actually see they don't even have to go into a reflection because I think Steven takes over and he's like, no, it wasn't me, So it's just like them actually talking to each other, having a conversation the without any reflection. That's where I was like, okay, now they're legit working together. Even though we got that notion at the top of this fight scene where they're kind of sharing the fights, but here now they're actually talking to one another in just midair, basically.
Yeah, they're literally one heart now.
Right.
So like you see the difference, and I think that's a really good example of that and how it's being manifested in their just like the fluidity of their conversation now.
Mm-hmm. And
Oh,
I was just gonna say, and from there, this is the moment to where, of course, we saw in episode 3 to where they were confused as far as it's like they didn't do
Mhm.
these these fights. But here, this is where I would say it's almost just a sense of how dangerous the other personality could be.
Yeah, and also I think that when that happened in episode 3, like they didn't really have time to figure it out, and it's like there's already so much confusion. They can't even like isolate this moment to be like, all right, can we talk about this and like what happened here? And in this scene, it's not just that they're more cohesive together, where they kind of isolate this little like, oh well, I thought we were done with this blackout stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have Layla to kind of confirm like what just happened, that it was kind of insane and it didn't feel like either of them, because she was like, what the hell was that,
Right.
so I feel like that gave them some validity in like what they're experiencing, and I mean, we've all been waiting for it. I feel like that was just a final like little thing before leading into the end credit.
I think if uh being that Layla was there and she saw this, right? She's the only one to actually know if there was a either a third suit,
Mm.
because each personality looks different, as we can assume. So I would assume there is a third suit for this other person, or being that, let's say at the end of this episode, Conchu is fully aware of this other being. Who knows, to the point to where Conchu has put Jake into the same suit as Mark, if that makes sense.
Mhm. See, I would agree. I think there's definitely going to be a third suit. We made a post about this earlier in the week as well, because there are like several different suits present in the comics, and the one that we really haven't seen is this darker version. Um, and so if like say he did don a suit, I would imagine it's a different one, and maybe we just haven't seen this conversation take place where Layla's like, okay, yeah, this guy, and he had a suit and this. But it could also be the case that, you know, he just got unleashed himself, and like maybe he's just that skilled of a fighter.
Mm-hmm.
He's a boxer, and he's meant to be like Jake Lockley's meant to be the most brutal and ruthless of the personalities. Um, but I know it's hard to say, but I think either way is correct. Something I did want to point out though is that it's when we think that Mark is about to lose the fight, and in the background we see Khonshu pretty much being like stabbed in
Yeah,
the
he's
chest,
losing too. Yeah.
losing. And so I'm wondering, because Khonshu's aware of this presence of Jake. I'm assuming even up to this point. I wonder if he's the one who's like, okay, we need Jake to come
Yeah,
out.
like
Like,
pulled him out or something like that, you think?
yes. So I'm wondering if that's how that happened there, because it was kind of like that I don't know what you would call it, that like last little thing to win the fight.
Yeah. Um Maybe I would think so, just because if anything, all we know of this other personality of Jake, uh he was kind of put away in this sarcophagus to where, as we saw Steven in this sarcophagus, it was Mark that had to get him out. So who knows? If anything, Conchu could have just pulled this personality out of whatever. Let's say all of these sarcophaguses are still in uh the body, in the brain of this body, and Conchu kind of has each person kind of locked away or whatnot. So if he's losing and he maybe feels that Mark is losing, he could have just been like, all right, let me unleash the dark one.
Yeah, and actually that's something to think about. Like maybe, 'cause I think now looking at the series in its entirety, like I think the whole asylum is definitely just a part of his consciousness, right? It's like the thing that he chose, for when he's like, traveling through the Duat and everything like that in the
Mm-hmm.
afterlife as well. So being that the asylum is meant to be like a symbol of his consciousness, and these rooms have, his memories, his traumas, and evidently also his different personalities, like because Mark is the base personality, he wasn't in a sarcophagus, but these other ones were. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like has to unlock it. If it's not Mark, like the way that he did to Steven, then Khonshu seems to have done that. And Khonshu's aware of Mark's traumas, right? Because if we kind of think back to some of the memories we saw, there was little glimpses of just like things that wouldn't make sense to be there. Like, oh, like Khonshu wasn't part of their life just yet. So I think if anything, he left imprints of himself to suggest that, oh, I've seen this
When
part
you're
of your.
talking about like when they go into the cave and you kind of see
Yeah,
like a
you see.
Conchu, like
Oh,
I don't want to say
yeah,
doll, but it was like a little baby skeleton of Conchu as they're kind of going into the cave.
yeah. So I saw some theories saying like this is like Khonshu leaving some of his imprints from when he has seen these for himself. And I think that would kind of add on really well with what you're saying, like, oh, like Khonshu had to open up that sarcophagus and like, okay, Jake, go. Like, I need you to take over here for
Mm-hmm.
this.
So with that being said, then let's say we're not fully aware of the connection that Conchu and Mark has, because we are just assuming that Conchu is a god and Mark is his avatar, to where, if anything, being that Conchu knows how damaged he is psychologically, this could have been a weakness from Mark for kind of Conchu to infiltrate and unleash whatever he needs to. Like, because let's say if we're going by the theory that he unleashed Jake to take care of Harrow, then that's a strong point to say that Conchu is fully aware of every personality that Mark has, and if anything, he can unleash whoever whenever. And we can say initially he didn't have that type of control because episode one, Steven wakes up randomly in a green field, nowhere like he has no idea where he's at. Conchu's just like, oh no, we got the dumb one. Bring Mark back, you know. But
Yeah.
like here, if we're to assume that he unleashed Jake, then who's to say that he has more control over Mark's mind than Mark knows? Just based off of what we see in the post-credit scene.
And it may be like that he's able to pull Jake out when Mark and Steven are in a vulnerable place. Like if you look at when, he was about to pretty much get destroyed by Harrow, and um Jake's personality was essentially created. This is the theory, and I think it kind of stands with everything we've seen so far, is that he's the personality that took the blows from his mom. Like the way that Steven protected Mark from like the emotional like pain and trauma by pretending, there's a piece of him that believes that his mom was amazing, that he had this normal life, that Jake is the personality that took the beating and protected Mark from that in a sense. And because of that, that's why Jake's personality is the most brutal. That's why he's a boxer. That's why he's just like ruthless and, willing to do the things that Mark and Steven wouldn't be willing to do for Khonshu. And so maybe in those vulnerable places is when he's able, like when Khonshu's able to pull him out. So not to say that he's more powerful or in control, but he does take advantage of those moments where he can, you know what I mean, and the weak
Mm-hmm.
points. And just falling back to what you said, like, yeah, like he did, I think, select Mark specifically because he saw all these fractures and this ability to take on so many different people, because he didn't technically break his promise like, oh, I will let you guys free. He's like, yep, Mark isn't my avatar anymore, Steven isn't my avatar, but Jake is my avatar and he's a completely different person.
Mm-hmm.
So I held my end of the bargain.
So, question.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say at the top of this season, Mark knew of Steven, but didn't really have conversations with Steven until this season started to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he knew of him having to go somewhere else psychologically just for another personality to take over. Do you think Jake had anything to do with Layla's dad? Like, and that whole, like, camp being killed, you know? Do you think it's a possibility that Mark may have said it was like a partner, but who's to say that Mark went unconscious and Jake took over and killed everybody at that camp? Like, what would you say to that?
Well, we talked about this theory before, right? And I feel like if it was that case where it's like he blacked out and all these people are dead, I feel like Mark wouldn't be one to just be like, oh, a partner did it. Because, like if that had happened, he would have known he just blacked out. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be evident that someone else did it. So at that
Mm-hmm.
point, he kind of trying to save himself from facing the fact that I might have done this. You know what I mean? Or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And on top of it, he was shot by his partner, and that's why he went and, had to like let Khonshu in to save himself. So I don't think it was, I mean, who knows if like maybe he was involved in the middle of a fight that was going on in there. Like I think that's valid, but I don't think it was, say, Jake that killed, say, the dad or things like that, if that's your question, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. Because now that we finally were introduced, I want to know, because he has known of Steven his whole entire life, but didn't probably doesn't know how long Jake has been in his life. Because I'm sure Jake hasn't just popped up since the rooftop scene in episode 3. I'm sure Jake has been there the whole entire time. So who's to say that, like, if anything, yes, Mark got shot by his partner, but who's to say that, hypothetically, I'm going to throw a random scenario out here right now. This has nothing to do with with anything factual here, but let's say, who knows? Jake could have gone on a killing spree, and then he could have got into a fight with his partner. Then, out of nowhere, he gives the body back to Mark. Partner shoots him. So I don't know. That could have been like a hypothetical situation for Mark and Jacob.
I mean, sure,
Not
yeah.
Jacob, Jake. Sorry.
Is this his full name? I'm just
Sure.
kidding. And I mean, who knows, right? I will say though that it does align well with the comics in that Mark isn't aware of Jake until later in life, in comparison to him being aware of Steven. So
Mm-hmm.
that does parallel with the comics. And even now, like, we at least haven't seen them really try to think about, like, okay, what was that? Why are we still blacking out, even though we've kind of found a harmony now? You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I guess season 2 is going to be about, which is confirmed. So
The only reason why I bring this up is just because, say, right when Conchu, right before he makes Mark into the Moon Knight, Mark was about to shoot himself in the head. If I'm already dying, there's no reason for me to just. I might as well just lay out and bleed out. So who knows if Mark realizes that this is another blackout, and he may be mentally exhausted of all these blackouts. Jacob may have been up to no good for a very long time, and he's just tired of Jacob doing all these bad things, and he was just like, I'm about to take myself out, and then Khonshu comes out of nowhere, just like, what a waste. So again, all of this is
yeah,
hypothetical, but Jacob leaves a whole lot of possibilities for season 2, if they're gonna do some flashbacks then and there, and yeah, I'm just curious just to see where it goes.
honestly, that's a very fair like theory. And I mean, we've been so right about a lot of these things overall through this like breakdown of the season. Who's to say? And I'm sure season 2 is going to have a similar outline in that, the storytelling isn't going to just be straight linear, right? Chronologically, there's going to be these like, I think similar to the way they set it up here with some like flashback scenes and things like that for us to understand like when did Jake come into play? What parts did Jake have involved in other areas that that we haven't really seen? So that's definitely gonna have to wait for season 2, but I'm excited. Like the way that the series ended, I mean, we know Amit has been taken care of, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, it's kind of how the battle wrapped up. Like, so Layla being the one who spoke with Osiris, who told her how to get rid of Amit, right? Which is to put him into a human body, right? Not just an Ushabti. And that way have him be vulnerable to death and ultimately being able to just be destroyed for good with
Mm-hmm.
no possibility of this ever happening again. But of course, it's Steven and Mark who are like, we're done. We're not going to do this. Like, this is kind of crossing on territory of like, you sound just like Amit, you know? And then, of course, we get this end credit scene where honestly, he does exactly what Mark told him to do, which is do it yourself, right? He kind
Right.
of takes care of Harrow and Amit, and that's where we get like that double tap scene at the end.
So as far as this double tap scene, the reason why I didn't want to talk about it earlier, but now that we're here, say it came to the point to where Harrow he ends up in a similar hospital or psych ward. It looks familiar to Mark and Steven's situation, to where I'm thinking, if anything, this is kind of almost like a punishment to Harrow. I was like, okay, so the gods kind of put him in the same situation as Mark and Steven, right? So we get him to where Mark's body rolls him out, puts him in a limo, and Khonshu is there. This is where again they had another Inception moment to where I have no idea if this is actual like real world or now this is something in Mark no not Mark's head but uh
Harrow.
Harrow's head because as we know right now or know of Jake, right? Uh Jake has been locked away in the quote unquote psych ward. We don't know him to come out. We have no idea who actually did these killings, quote unquote, in the real world when Mark was fighting Steven, right? So let's say if uh, Jake is still there, I would assume that Khonshu still has access to go back and forth from real world to the afterlife world, just like uh, Taweret. You know, any god can go here. So I don't know. I'm really thinking this could be like the end of Inception, to where this could possibly be in how did Taweret phrase it? This is like untethered consciousness. This could be that with Hera.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I think I see what you're saying. So like I think because there's like two different like components when it comes to like the confusing elements that were introduced in episode 4 and 5, right? Like the psych ward and then like the afterlife, right? So
Mm-hmm.
everyone's what it seems like they're you know when they go through the Egyptian afterlife and they're traveling through the Duat, their I guess journey or their ship looks very different and it's all based on the psychology, the personality of that particular person. And, you know, this was the first time that she mentioned that it was a psych ward.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe the psych ward is meant to symbolize his consciousness as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
whereas that the dua and the afterlife are like separate things from that technically.
Mm-hmm.
It's, we see them merge in this instance because, you know, in order for them to travel through the duat, it's via the consciousness or the personality, you know, the way it's formed for the particular person.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with that being said, like, yeah, I agree. Like, you know, it seems like Conscious has the ability to still go into like Steven's consciousness because they're connected still, even after having left, right? Tao Rabbit had like an ability to go into that and share that space with them. I think just because they were journey like on the journey of the duat. So I guess it is a question like, is she still able to find herself in this like psych ward? I feel like the case is no longer that
Are you
since it's.
talking? Are wait? Are you referring to Taweret being there?
Oh no, I'm just saying in general. Like if we're speaking, like I think the reason Khonshu, like I agree, I believe Khonshu can still enter like that psych ward,
Mm-hmm.
not the god, but because he has connections to this body still. You know, I think like for example, Taweret like no longer has that because they're not traveling through like the Dua and all that kind of
Okay.
stuff. So say like Harrow, like I don't see him having the ability to end up in Mark Stevens like psych ward consciousness because there's no, I think, physical way for him to do that,
So
you know?
you're saying with that, like you're saying, if anything, the psych ward is specific to Steven and Mark, right? That's what you're saying. But there, I would say, even with that being said, uh, it's still uh I don't know. I'm losing it because I would say it's still a certain place to where these guys can travel back and forth. The yes, no, it's no longer on a boat on the Duat on the way to the underworld, but I was just kind of theorizing as if this place were just more so just like I said, a place of punishment. I don't know. I can't call it Inception. That's how
There's,
Inception got me, you know.
yeah, there's something like these are the questions I think this kind of storytelling are meant to evoke. Like, I don't think we're all supposed to have a definitive answer. Like, we're supposed to be somewhat confused and we can each kind of have our own interpretation. Until they give us more, we can't like definitively say which like element is right or wrong. And I think that's so true to the way that the Moon Knight comics, especially like the recent ones I've read, like the newer versions, are set up because from one page to another, you're like, okay, so is like is the psych ward real? Is it physically real? Is it a symbol of his his like mind, but it's not, you know what I mean? So it's like I think all of the questions we're having are fair, and until like we get more, we can't really say, you know,
Yeah.
whether it's meant to be like a prison that other people can go in, you know, kind of like Inception type, or is this just a representation of Mark's consciousness, and is that separate, you know?
Right.
So I think all these are valid, you know? I think it's true to the story.
Okay. Yeah, it got me. My mind was fried afterwards. Because just let's say, Inception aside, if if this happened in the real world, right, and this is actually Mark's body doing this with Jake kind of behind the wheel, literally and psychologically, um, then I don't know. They didn't. Of course, it was a post credit scene, and it was separate from the end of the episode because the episode ended to where they're both back in the flat in the UK, right? So who's to say? Uh, Now going from the UK back to wherever Harrow is, I would assume Harrow's in a hospital still in Egypt. You know, from the UK all the way to Egypt, that's in Africa. You know, that's I don't know. That's a lot for even just a third personality to be added to that situation. You know, how would we know that Harrow's here? One, and obviously that's Khonshu. Khonshu told Jacob where where Harrow is. You know, but I don't know. It's. I love the season. I'm just gonna end it there. I love the season, even though it kind of just made my mind melt. It was a good show. Thank you, Marvel, for doing that. Sometimes I need that. I need my mind fried. I don't need just the regular type of show. Give me something to where it just leaves us with a question mark.
Yeah, and it's not definitive. Like I think the way I've like chosen to kind of see it is that, you know, because I feel like I always try to just find the reasoning because then I don't like when my head just hurts at the end. But like the way I just kind of decided to like see it is that the psych ward that we saw Mark and Steven in with like the sarcophagus and the memories is meant to symbolize like his consciousness, right? And you know, the Dr. Harrow we see there is just meant to kind of be like the self-doubting or the divide that he has been struggling with until ultimately he's able to be like, you know what, I know who, like what we are and we're taking it as it is, and that's how he's kind of able to step out.
Yeah.
But since it's like we still have another, like who knows, like we know we have one more at least, but there could be several, and that's why Concha is like, dude, why would I even look for anyone else? Like I have an like a plethora of untapped personalities I can just jump into. If Jake doesn't work out, I have like many more. And
Mm-hmm.
has like the ability to, you know, he can play with that just because he still has connection to his consciousness now.
Yeah.
So to see like our real life hero say find himself there, I think would take some kind of like witchcrafty like inception level, like I'm gonna actually penetrate your mind, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So I don't know. It's a mess. It's meant to be a mess right now. I don't think we're ever gonna unwind all like these little threads, but
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think these kind of stories are fun. They're different than just say like the straightforward Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which are still great, but
Mm-hmm.
it's nice, and I think it gives me hope because we're gonna be continuing to get more stories, and I mean they're mapping out the next 10 years, Marvel,
Mm-hmm.
right? If we want these next 10 years to be as good as the first 10, like I think we need to be open to these kinds of storytellings. And I honestly I think they kicked it like out of the park. It was good.
So besides Conchu, I'm taking it way back to the very beginning of this episode, and even the top of episode 4. There were at least 5, maybe more Ushaptis there with Conchu. Do you think they're going to take part in the future of Moon Knight?
When they first showed them, I was trying so hard to see if I can make out any of like the Ushaptis to see like, oh, which god is it? If it's this particular god, let's see how they're involved in the comics, and then do all these things. And I honestly couldn't tell who was who or what.
Right.
I know we did get like some clearer scenes of